Title your notes World War II, Part 1. Alright, today we are going to begin World War II. This is going to be a pretty lengthy unit, so we'll have, this will be divvied up into many different lectures. Your essential questions for tonight. You need to do what were the causes of World War II. The second one, how did the end of World War I lead to World War II? And 3, what led to the emergence of fascism and Nazism in Europe? So let's first start with the causes. Now hopefully this is review from last year, but let's start with the causes, and we'll start with nationalism. Many areas of Europe were under the control of a new government after World War I. A lot of these countries were brand new, or at least under a new government. Basically, after the Treaty of Versailles, one day you might wake up German, the next day you're in Poland. It just depends on where you were living and the lines that were drawn there. It was with these places you have not only pride in one's country, such as we'll see with Germany, how they'll go back to the militarism and the extreme nationalism, which you'll see in Germany and Italy and those places, but also the nationalism that we talked about in World War I with the minority groups in like Poland and Czechoslovakia and the Rhineland, which will actually continue to make it difficult for those new governments. That's nationalism. The Treaty of Versailles, and we'll underline it, star it, circle it, highlight it. That is the major cause of World War II. It was too harsh. Basically, it blamed Germany for everything. It blamed Germany for everything that happened in World War I. Not that they didn't deserve a lot of the blame, but it made it very harsh on Germany, made it basically it provided for the emergence of the dictators in Italy, especially with Hitler in Germany. So it caused a lot of economic chaos, and not only in Germany but all over Europe, still trying to recover from World War I. Unemployment, inflation, the Depression was a worldwide thing, so that hit Europe as well. Appeasement as we advance into Hitler's reign in Germany. People didn't want war, and Hitler kept basically kind of testing the waters to see what he could get away with, and the European powers just kept, okay, just don't do it again. Appeasement means giving someone what they want in the hopes that they will go away, and it just doesn't work. They will just want more. I always use my kids as an example. Take your kids to the grocery store, and you're waiting in line. Dad, can I have this candy bar? And then they throw a fit and you give it to them. Well, what are they going to do next time? So you got to take a stand. And England and France did just that. They just kept giving them what they wanted. Here's a great political cartoon. You can see this wolf is supposed to be Hitler. Notice a little mustache there. And there are the European powers handing over Czechoslovakia like he's, here you go. No more after this. And after the Munich conference, which supposedly ended this, Neville Chamberlain right here, who was the Prime Minister of Britain at the time, said that we just avoided the war. How wrong was that, as we know now? Political unrest. A lot of stuff going on between basically fighting for democracy, even communism, and then those nationalist groups that we talked about within Europe. There are about 20 different political parties in some places, including Germany and Italy at this point, which makes it once again easy for a dictator to rise up. So a lot of political unrest in these newer countries, or these countries that were weakened by war, which made it very easy for a strong dictator-like person to jump into the fray. And there's no coincidence that we see a lot of dictatorships during this time. It's because of that political unrest, which you could trace back to the Treaty of Versailles. We were neutral. Okay, we went back into isolationism. We were not going to get involved in Europe's affairs. We had our own concerns. Think of the Great Depression going on during this time. So why would we step our foot into Europe's affairs when we got our own problems? So we will be neutral. We don't take a strong leadership role during these times, but that's where we are. And then imperialism. Now, imperialism isn't as rampant as it was before World War I, but there is one country that really steps up as an imperialistic during this time, and it started back in World War I, and that was Japan. Japan is just gobbling up territory, starting with gobbling up Germany's territory right at the end of World War I, and they have continued. So other countries not so much, just because they can't afford it at this point, but definitely Japan will be the most imperialistic of the time period. And then, of course, the rise of dictators, which goes into that. You can trace that back to the political unrest. Tyrants rose to power, and basically one man, one rule. We'll have Germany, obviously, with Hitler, the most famous guy. That's who you think of when you think of a dictatorship. He will be with the Nazi Party, or the National Socialist Democratic Workers' Party. Okay. In Italy, you have the fascist, led by Benito Mussolini. Now, Benito Mussolini won't have all the power in Italy, but most of it anyway, okay? But not quite as strong as Hitler, as we'll see. Now, fascism is a little bit different. It emphasizes the importance of the nation or an ethnic group and the supreme authority of the leader. So you put the nation first. And we'll talk about some of these things that, how these leaders kept and controlled their power. In Japan, you have a military dictatorship led by Hideki Tojo, right here. However, you also have an emperor. And the emperor... Oops, sorry, a little too far. The emperor was named Hirohito. And there he is right there. Very young man at this point. Very similar to a constitutional monarchy. But Tojo had the power. The reason why the emperor was still around is because the Japanese people almost saw the emperor as a god. And you can't get rid of the emperor, basically. Even the United States, after World War II, we will still keep the emperor around because of that same reason. We thought it would make the transition a lot easier of governments, and they still have an emperor today. Okay, and it's actually, I believe it's Hirohito's son. So even though there were some war crimes behind that he might have known about, we will keep him in power because that will help with the transition. Because people saw him almost as a god, or godlike. Back in the old Japanese traditions, you were put to death if you made eye contact with the emperor. Okay, so different traditions, definitely. We'll talk more about those two later. In Spain, now you don't hear much about Spain during World War II because they didn't really participate. But we have a dictator named Francisco Franco who will actually rule until his death in 1975. He was another fascist. He actually makes a deal. He gets help from Benito and Hitler to gain power, and then just never gets involved in the war. And then lastly, in Russia, you have Joseph Stalin. And probably, even though he was a communist, and usually the Communist Party will control, in this case, Joseph Stalin was in charge. He was a dictator, and of all these three, including Hitler, he might have killed or been responsible for the death of more people than even Hitler. It just depends on different sources that you read. Now let's talk about Hitler's party. The National Socialist Party, or the Nazis. Their message was Aryan supremacy. Okay, we're going to find out later that they're in for this one Aryan race, and here's a great example. This is a German propaganda poster from World War II. Lots of these are out there during this time. Here is the perfect German. Notice how tall he's towering over all these other minority groups within Germany. That's what they wanted to see. That was the perfect person. And they wanted national supremacy. That's extreme nationalism. Look how great the German culture is. It needs to be. We need to spread it throughout. They also wanted Lebensraum, or what meant living space. Okay, Germans believed in super nationalism. It took it to an extreme, and with that, the state supersedes the individual. So what happens with the government is more important than the individual, and their excuse for expanding, for showing off their country, is that they needed room. They needed more space for the German people because they were overpopulated. And like I said, with appeasement early on, some of those European powers will give into that. They wanted the land back that they lost in World War II. That's what they wanted. Or World War I, sorry. Some of that land on the Rhineland, the land that they gained with Russia and the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. And we'll see with the early aggressions that Hitler does, that's what he first goes after. Okay. Now in the United States, it's opposite. The individual is more important in the United States. Individual rights and things like that. The government serves us. Okay. In a fascist government or in a Nazi government, you serve the government. They'll have a dictatorship, okay, and that will be Germany's form of government. Hitler, it didn't start off that way. As you hopefully learned last year, they actually had a democracy, and then slowly Hitler will seize more and more power. His popularity grew because he promised to restore Germany's past glory, and frankly, desperate times. Okay. He also was very anti-communist, mainly because, and there are many theories on this, why he believed this. Some say it traced back to the fact that Karl Marx, who came up with the idea of communist, was actually Jewish. Communism highest level is that there is no state, and that's the opposite of what the Nazis believed. The state was everything. So it just depends, but he hated communism and attacked communists. And at this point in German history, there was, even Munich actually fell under communist control at one point. So many believe that Hitler was the best case scenario, and that he could actually control the communists, wipe out communism, and that people could control Hitler. So he rises to power in that manner that he's going to take out the communists, but then we could control them. And as we know, very, very wrong. So very anti-communist, and as we know, and this is without saying, anti-Semitic as well. against the Jewish population. Okay, he blamed the Jews for all the problems in Germany. They needed a scapegoat, and they found one there. And we know what the final solution is, and that was to exterminate all the Jews in Germany. That was one of the things that he wanted to achieve as well. All right, we will stop there today. We'll continue with Hitler in the next lecture. Stay classy, Vandalia.